Matt and JD back for the FIDE Chess Olympiad 2022 Round 4 recap. Today we're going to drill down into the Norway against Mongolia match. It was a 2-2 tie. Which game are we going to look at today?
Well, of course, we're going to look at Magnus Carlsen's game. What else? What else are we going to look at? It was kind of a beautiful game, though. So, like, even if it hadn't been Magnus Carlsen that played this game, certainly would be the one I want to show you guys.
Yeah, this was a good choice. All right, so let's jump into it. We got Magnus playing white, and his opponent is Dambasurin
Oops.
Matsurin.
No, I just ruined it for you guys. I skipped to the end there. Hopefully, nobody was paying that close of attention yet. So it starts out like this knight f3, knight f6 stuff. And Magnus has been playing a lot of this Catalan stuff later, but actually we just transposed to a typical like Queen's Gambit decline game. And now we get sort of a Rogozin out of it. If we played c6, we'd have our triangle move order, and we'd have a pretty standard Queen's Gambit decline. With this bishop g5, white wants some ideas like this, black. If we could give black some moves, they'd be happy to maybe play this way. So we get bishop g5, which prevents that. h6 just dropping back, castles, e3, and then, as soon as this knight d7 is played, which blocks in this bishop, Magnus go ahead and transforms the position. And now we have my beloved Carlsbad structure. So I'm already immediately excited about this game because this is my favorite pawn structure to play. And I was excited to see how the world champion would handle this pawn structure.
And there's kind of two plans for white, right? With the Carlsbad, white could either go for a3, b4 and do this minority attack on the queen side, or like we have in our ChessGoals course, sometimes you can play f3, e4, or even e4 without f3. So there's kind of those two plans for white.
Yeah, I actually think that maybe distinguishing between f3, e4, and then just e4 immediately are I think there is a distinguishing between those plans. There's a fourth plan too, though. There's this sort of Pillsbury attack where you put the knight on e5 and then play f4.
Oh yeah,
that's another plan that sometimes is executed, but we do see one of these four plans in this game. It's sort of beautifully executed. So c6 happens, we get castles, and then he chooses to drop back to d6, which is not the most common move. The most common move is just to play rook e8, and if we go this way, we end up with a pretty standard looking kind of position. So something like queen c2 happens. Now the bishop drops back, and we end up with this minority attack plan in this line, which is the most common. White is still scoring really, really well in this particular variation, though. So I think this could have went with rook e8. This bishop d6, I suppose the idea just must be that you want to be aggressive among this diagonal, and often white wants to drop this bishop back in times where this knight can come out, so that there's no exchange on the e7 square. But with the knight on d6, or sorry, the bishop on d6, you're maybe preventing that idea. So queen c2 happens anyway. We get rook e8, and then I like this move, rook fe1. He's just directly preparing to play e4.
And I mean, I think he's taking advantage of? If you look at black's moves so far, he's moved this knight once. It's about to move twice. This bishop has already moved twice, and we're starting to see that white's development is more efficient, and that's why this plan coming up is going to work so well for Magnus. He's taking advantage of all these wasted moves by black.
Well, then if you're already complaining about black's wasted moves, wait until you see the next one. It's there, we move the bishop again. So he could have had almost this exact same position if he played the rook e8 and then the bishop back to e7, which is sort of the main lines. But maybe this is not his typical MO, but this would be surprising if we get a GM of this caliber who, it just feels strange to go from d6 and then drop back again. I don't understand it. Now we do get this bishop g3 idea, which the point being that so for example, let's say I want to just make a continuing move, I don't know, something like this. You might get this kind of an idea where we ask this question to this bishop, and white would kind of like to leave these bishops on. So instead, we go ahead and drop the bishop back, and then now knight f8 happens. This opens up the bishop, and this knight's probably going to come out to one of these two squares. But as soon as this bishop is open, we get h3. So this is, I think, really instructive the way he's played that. So if we go back, we look at e3, and then once knight bd7 happens, shutting this bishop in, now we make the exchange, which opens up this line. And then if we go forward again to when the knight moves, so after knight f8, again, this bishop is threatening to come out. We play h3 and shut it off. Yeah. So, which is a key thing that really happens a lot in these Carlsbad structures, is it seems like this bishop has a nice diagonal, but it really doesn't. Like the bishop can't go to f5, can't go to g4. d7 doesn't really seem that great. And, a lot of players end up putting on e6, but then you sort of blunted your rook's access down this line. So Magnus is doing a sort of a masterclass showing the right moments to take advantage of this bishop's lack of mobility.
And the engine eval here is about 1.0. So if you add up all of these factors, Stockfish says white's already up the equivalent of a pawn. And if you look at the other pieces for black, so not only is this bishop having some trouble, look at the knight on f6. If he goes to h5 now, like JD mentioned, we have a simple bishop h2. The knight can't go to e4. White has full control. This knight can't go to g6. It doesn't really want to go to e6, and it doesn't have any future squares from e6, really. So, yeah, just brilliant play by Magnus so far, taking full control of the position. In a 1.0 eval at this GM level, 14 moves in, that's pretty impressive.
It is quite nice. It's really quite nice. And we do see kind of a highlight now that the bishop on g7. And we notice that there's no knight e4. But if our bishop were still setting on h4, knight e4 would be a possibility because of some tactical shots here. Mm-hmm. So b6, clearly the idea being to do something with this bishop along this diagonal, and then also c5, probably trying to strike back. But before that can ever happen, white's totally mobilized and just hits with the immediate e4, which is great. I mean, we're not worried about this pawn at all. What force does black really have? I mean, black chose to capture, but what else are you going to do? Like, let's say, for example, you just chose to bring your bishop out. Well, now we can even play e5, but perhaps even stronger is capturing here, and we get c takes, and now this bishop looks kind of dumb. So if instead of that, you don't like that idea, maybe you come out to e6, but now e5 happens. This knight would drop over here, and we drop back, and we're threatening g4 right now, and this knight has nowhere to go.
Just highlighting black's problems.
Yeah, g6 is just such an ugly move. And so we're just going to slowly prepare to play this g4 move at some point. We can even just drag this knight over. We're sort of like touching base here. c5 is not such a big problem. We're not really worried about it too much. And say you try to prepare it, no big deal. We can put the queen on c2, getting out of the way of the rook, touching this guy. We're maybe forcing g5 now, and this king is starting to feel a lot of air. And after, say, that we play g4 at this point, the knight has to drop back to g7. We got a fianchetto knight, because that's what everybody loves to do.
Yeah, with no future squares.
Yeah, with no future squares. And then our knight to e2 maneuver suddenly makes sense, because now f5 and h5, our whole army is really directing towards the king side. This knight might move when we play f4. This bishop maybe is going to see a roll from the f4 square. I understand why black didn't want to allow this huge space, this major thorn, and which is really the way he had to play, according to the old engine buddy.
I got a question for you.
Yeah,
as a QGD and Rogozin kind of expert, you play these positions a lot. If black doesn't play pawn to b6, is it still just as strong to play e4, or does e4 become even stronger once b6 is played because it kind of softens the c6 pawn?
I think it does become stronger after. So e4 is often it's the counter shot that's against black's queen side play. So for example, if you play here, e4 is not really so strong, because we'll just take it and we get if we say takes, this bishop can even just come to d5 or something.
Okay. Yeah, so these pawns are solid. If black doesn't play b6, we're not getting that same weakness down the c file.
Yeah, for example, if instead of b6, even if b5 happened, which is a common thing that gets played, often the antidote to b5 is e4. I don't think we can really play it just yet because this move is annoying. Even though really this is probably okay. Like something like this is probably acceptable. Like we come here, you take here, maybe you grab this guy. Like this seems like a pretty comfortable position. We're even happy that our somewhat awkward bishop is gone, because we can put a knight here. We can maybe put a knight here. I mean, this is not quite so bad as the game, but this sort of idea still exists here.
Yeah, so this is pretty deep, but it does seem like b6 was a mistake by black, just making e4 an even stronger move.
But it's a really natural human move, like to want to do that. So yeah, b6 happened, and then now e4 strikes, and he goes ahead and captures, because he didn't want to allow this pawn, this is huge, massive thorn. So he played knight takes, and now he goes ahead and tries to develop the bishop. He wants to play c5. He wants to open this bishop up. He's making good natural human play, but Magnus just pounces.
The material's equal, but look at that eval bar. 2.9.
Yeah, the eval bar is fantastic. He's technically sacrificing a pawn, but like, do you think he can get away with taking it?
That looks dangerous. Let's see what happens.
It looks super dangerous. Well, yeah, you take it, and actually we can just play bishop c4, and this pawn is indefensible. We probably have other ways to win too.
I think the queen is almost trapped there. So like, put the bishop on
like
c4.
This move was what looked attractive to me, and my idea is to take here and then play here, and I'm gonna win the queen.
All right, so poison pawn on d4. You really want nothing to do with that line.
It's really, really dangerous. The white probably has 30 ways to destroy you if you take that pawn. So seeing that there's this pressure on f7 and that bishop c4 is going to come, white plays knight to e6, and which maybe now he's kind of sort of thinking about taking it, but this is just much too slow. We could sort of defend the pawn this way. We could play rook d1, and if you go ahead and try to capture now, well, now we can take, you take back with the bishop. We can give this check, and you've got to go to f8, which is sort of ugly and hilarious. You get queen e4, defending this knight, double attacking this knight. This pawn's pinned, can't come forward. And, we lost a pawn, but you're going to struggle to get back, to save your material. Really, the only way you can do it is you got to give up the exchange.
And I think
something like this.
These kind of positions, like for most of our viewers, it can be hard to understand. Like even for you and I, sometimes you reach a position like this in your game and you don't see stockfish, right? You might think, I don't know if I have enough compensation. Like once you see this knight takes d4, hitting the queen immediately, do I have enough compensation for that pawn? But really strong players like the GMs, they have a really nice understanding of these dynamics. And if you don't quite understand, like, where does white's advantage come from here, take a position like this, play it against stockfish, right? What moves do you think black would play, and just see how they get punished very quickly? Because we're looking at like a 3.5, 4 pawn advantage here. So this type of line, almost completely winning at Magnus Carlsen level, 3.5 points.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular situation is not so hard to have calculated this, because you really just, okay, check, like only move, right? Check, only move. And then you just know that you're here, and all you have to really calculate, because it's not so hard to figure out that you're pretty happy with this.
That's true.
So from here, you just need to calculate this move. And now after bishop takes, you just need to see that this pawn cannot move forward and this knight cannot move. And if those things are okay, then you're fine. I suppose you need to worry about f6.
Yeah. It's more straightforward than some, but it is, there's some complexities too.
Yeah, and it's all pretty forcing though. It's not like where you have to find some like series of quiet moves to maintain your structure. So instead of so knight e6 was played, Magnus took here, and bishop takes is the reply, and now we give this check anyway. And again, this check often seems kind of silly, because you're like, what's the point? What am I doing? Why does this matter? Because usually the king can just move out of the way.
Right.
But because of this knight on e5, the king can't move out of the way. And it's not even because you're going to lose the queen. This is just straight checkmate.
Yeah, you can't take the queen. The game ends. Yeah. It's over.
Yeah, the game ends. The game's over. So the king's forced to come back to the center, which is already starting to get to be uncomfortable. So Magnus just brings in the last piece. Notice he's got every piece playing.
You know what I like about that move? We've seen this in other games so far in the Olympiad. Like Dominguez Perez did a great job of this in the game we reviewed. you just bring more pieces into the center. You don't always have to rush in the attack and try to win that material back. Like, what is black going to do? You got to think about it from your opponent's side. Not a lot of great moves for black. Let's just put the rook on d1, and then we'll continue with the tactics.
I mean, we're not even down any material. I mean, okay,
True.
fine. He can take the pawn, But like, we end up with the same. Notice this is just a direct transposition into what we were just looking at.
Queen e4. Yep.
Queen e4, and again, you have all the problems we were just discussing. And probably the best thing again is to sack the exchange, or probably come this way. And then I'm certain that Magnus would have found his way here. After f6, it's probably even worse. I guess we just have rook takes d4 even.
Yeah, and these tactics are all favoring white. You're taking the queen with check.
Yeah, we take the queen with check. And if we have to, if nothing else, we can just drop the queen out of the way, defend the rook, and just be up a queen for a rook.
Looks good.
So again, we're not worried about taking the pawn. So instead, bishop takes. I had a choice here, and the engine doesn't actually agree with Magnus's choice, but I quite like it. He took with the pawn, and his point being is that he's brought this pawn in line with the f pawn, and he's creating this pawn duo that he can just launch up the board. And yeah, I really like this idea. I know the computer likes this, but it's like, this just isn't as clear to me what our follow-up. This is like pure computer crazy calculations to prove an advantage here.
And the evals are pretty close. You know, they're close to 3 points.
Yeah, the evals are pretty close. I think this idea with the idea of launch, this is like a human way to play. It makes sense. I know what I'm going to do. Like if black does nothing, I know what my next 4 or 5 moves are going to be. So queen to e7, you know, trying to defend this pawn. Obviously, you've got to get off this here. Now, f4 happens immediately. Now, after f4, c5, again, a human move, technically a mistake, but, you know, it's hard to suggest anything else. I mean, maybe you want to come in and, like, try to bring a rook in, but I'm just going to continue on.
I was thinking a rook trade might make sense. You know, it kind of goes with the plan. You're playing defensively. Let's trade off some attackers.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I like is that this rook is sort of getting in the way of the king a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was thinking that if we take, then this king has a little bit more breathing room than it currently has.
Good point. Yeah.
At least that was my thinking on it.
And no reason to take. Let black take us.
After f5, if you capture, well, so now you've got to deal with the knight somehow, and it's not so easy to figure out what you're going to do. I mean, what, knight g5? And I mean, we have any number of things. We could probably just play f6 and be doing fantastic if we're worried about the bishop here. So instead, black chose to play c5, which I think that's a move that just makes a lot of sense. And we want to maybe go put the knight here on d4, because, you know, he knows that this f5 is coming. He's going to have to do something with the knight. And I think that being able to put the knight on d4, which is a really attractive looking square with tempo, like, I think that a lot of people could come up with the c5 idea here.
And I think a lot of players from the white perspective, you know, club level players, experts, masters, you might get a little intimidated by a move like knight to d4, and you might overreact to that threat. But I really like what Magnus does here. He pretty much ignores it and says, I'm going with the kingside attack.
Because I don't care. This is what I set out to do. It's what I'm going to do. And so then knight d4 happens. Queen to f2. I like this move. Point being that the queen is still attacking this weak f7 square. Like, for example, if we envision that this f5 pawn was gone, well, we already have some bishop. We already have some bishop g6 ideas. So queen to d7. Again, creating a bit of luft, a bit of room. It's not clear what else you're supposed to do. Maybe, I mean, if you play this way, well, I can just try to start. I can do things like this, or maybe I'm just going to come here and play e6. I have quite a few ideas.
And I'm looking at ideas like, if white gets the bishop to h4, kicks the queen away, and then has the queen on g3, there's some nasty checkmate threats. Like, you might even just go bishop f6. And if this pawn takes, mate is coming. Like, there's some crazy
You're right, actually. Yeah, actually bishop h4 immediately seems quite good. And if you don't want to drop any material, you're basically forced to play f6, which is, and now, well, you're losing material anyway.
Yeah, even e takes f looks really strong there.
Yeah, e-tough, yeah, even that. I mean, no, all kinds of moves. So it makes sense why we don't see the rook coming over. The queen slides out of the way. Now maybe we have time to bring the rook over, but we don't because e6 happens.
Ooh, what a move. What a move. I mean, you got to calculate it out. Make sure that it
Yeah,
works, but
it takes advantage of the fact that the knight can't defend the e6 square because of the pin. And you can't really capture this way. So like this would be great for us because we would take back and thank you for the queen. Like we're just winning a queen for nothing. So you can't take it in any way, and you can't go past it. And you've got to move the queen. Moving the queen's the only choice. So he chose to go to c6. Again, getting out of this pin. But now bishop to e5, just letting things sit. And it's not, again, taking is not a great idea. Not great at all.
What about f6 for black?
What's that? Yeah, what f6? F6 is probably the most natural looking move. But
yeah.
After f6, I'm just going to grab this guy. I'll just grab this. You'll take back. I'll take here. I'm up a clean pawn. I have this awesome pass pawn. You're damn near checkmated if I ever get anything on a dark square here against your king. Your king is totally unsafe. This would be a miserable position to try to play for black.
No rook d8 because takes and e7 check. Yeah, black's just completely tied down. This is coming here. This is coming down. Yeah, this is over.
Wow. You can try to play this, but I can actually, this pin is perhaps annoying, but I just break it.
Yeah, b4 is a nice move.
Yeah, and you can't keep your queen there. Like you got to move it. And like as long as I don't hang mate here on g2, I think this is a very easy position for us to win. So f6 is not really possible. So he brings the knight in, and we just continue on. Now we have a serious threat. Like this is really hard to deal with. I mean, if we make a nothing move, it's just a mate. Like this is just mate. So now you have to do something, but it's not clear what you do. Now, black did make a threat with their last move, if any of you were noticing that. Because I mean, white has a huge initiative. But I guess he didn't see Magnus's idea. Because Magnus clearly saw that he could that this was an option. This is a fork, and we're forced to take it. And then he takes with check, and this is how the game went, and we've just lost an exchange. And now we have to get an attack in somehow. And it looks like that the black king is going to escape. King e7. Ooh, I'm getting out of here, getting out of dodge. But no, like this is worth taking a moment and looking and see what the proper finish is. There's actually tons of finishes. You can play almost anything. There's almost anything winning. But Magnus finds the way to.
Yeah, he had the most style.
Finds the most style. He wins style points out the wazoo. I don't care if this cost him a couple % on his accuracy score. Whenever we of course know Magnus puts all of his games into the chess.com analysis of his accuracy score, and he settles on losing a few accuracy points for the beautiful bishop f6.
He wanted that brilliant symbol. We all want.
Yeah, he wanted the brilliant. So yeah, clearly a brilliancy. It's awful. Like if you play king takes, well, this check is just pretty brutal. You have to go. I mean, you go to g5, and then this is going to be made in a couple moves. And if you come this way, well, this is looking pretty brutal. Maybe if there's even better. Yeah, maybe not. Here, you can try to take it, but now bishop g6 check, and we can sack our queen for a beautiful little mate. This is like a Morphy style mate. So instead of allowing all of these things, okay, you take the bishop. Okay, that seems like. But now we just have check, and you can't take the pawn. You would like to, because otherwise your rook's going to hang, because this is a check. So you take the pawn, but we just get check, and you only have one move, which is here, and mate.
I bet Magnus knew a lot of this just from intuition. Like there's a lot of lines here, and I'm sure he calculated a few to make sure that it worked, but his intuition must have just said bishop f6 is good enough to win.
Yeah, so yeah, this was a really beautiful game for Magnus. I really, really, really enjoyed it. So I hope you guys do as well. So we said that the Norway team they drew their match today thanks to this great game for Magnus. How did the rest of the teams do? How's your beloved India?
So my favorite team, India, 2-1 again today, of course, 3-1 against Italy. But we did see a bunch of draws at the top. India and France was a 2-2 tie. U.S. and Uzbekistan also 2-2. Caruana lost his game on board 1, and Wesley So won on board 3. And this actually put Caruana below Nakamura in the live ratings. Maybe a little drama there.
Pretty disappointing game from Caruana. Like I looked at it, it didn't look that great. Disappointing from Caruana to lose that game. Not that game, but just to lose in general. He's the highest rated player in the Olympiad. Is that right? Or was until this game?
Yeah, or pretty close to it. With the published ratings, he was 2783. I think there was a difference in the live ratings. But then we also had Turkey drew their match against Azerbaijan. Canada drew against Iran. So a lot of draws, and it's going to shake up the leaderboard. So in terms of who's on a perfect score in terms of match points, there's only 5 teams. Do you know the 5?
I don't know the 5. I know one of them is your beloved India 2.
India 2. They're in first if you count the tiebreak of individual board points. They have 8 match points, 15 board points. And then we got Israel, England, Spain, and Armenia. So only 5 teams with a perfect 4-0 match score.
And you're the only, between the two of us, and we both picked several favorite teams, you're the only one that still has one of your teams in the top. Serbia got destroyed today, which I was rooting for, but Iceland won and Germany won, and United States didn't do so hot. So on the whole, we're doing okay. We got the U.S. sitting down here in 17th place. We're the number 1 seeds by a pretty massive margin. We're sitting in 17th place after 4 rounds. Kind of disappointing for us, but India fans got to be ecstatic. They have 2 teams that are performing better than the U.S. is right now.
Yeah, how's India 3 doing? They have
I think they lost today.
3-1, yeah, 3-1 and 11 board points.
Yeah,
but one thing to note.
Go ahead.
We do have 11 rounds in this event, and if you look at previous Olympiads, like teams only play each other once. So you get towards the later rounds, and it's like all the top teams have already played each other by like round 8 or 9. And then they start to play lower teams. The U.S. probably knows they're in this for the long haul. I bet they're not too worried being down half a point.
No, I don't think they're too worried, but I still think that they would have they would have much preferred to win this round. They weren't playing like the strongest team in the world. You use Uzbekistan, okay, the team's pretty strong. They're all 2,600. They're not all 20. They're not even all 2,600. All right, take it back. We had no excuses. Very disappointed, and I hope that their coach John Donaldson gives them like a stern talking to, or maybe he's the pep talk kind of guy. Maybe he's the inspirational guy, like Denzel from that football movie.
Well, do you know how old Nordebek is?
I don't. How old is Nordebek?
Let's see. He was born in 2004. He's 17 years old right now.
Wow.
And he's one of the top juniors. So Caruana losing against him, it's not that bad of a loss. He's definitely higher skill level than his 2688 rating, I think. He's probably over 2,700 strength. But yeah, you don't really want to have like a draw early on and be forced to play catch up.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, we'll be back with the next round. Let us know what your favorite games were and how your teams are doing. And we'll see you guys later.
Bye, guys.